Homage to teacher Shakyamuni Buddha. Homage to Manjushri, wisdom, courage. Homage to the kind Guru. The profound Dharma is rare. Now I can see, hear, receive, and uphold it. May I truly understand the Tathagata's genuine meaning. In order to liberate all sentient beings, please give rise to the unsurpassed and supreme bodhicitta. Next, we will continue studying the preliminary practices of Dzogchen. As everyone knows, we are progressing rather slowly in our detailed explanation of the preliminary practices this time. However, it is truly essential to practice diligently. I've observed that many individuals feel quite positive and experience a sense of well-being during their cultivation process. Their responses have been quite positive. Of course, the preliminary practices are quite different from some other specific Vajrayana practices. Nowadays, many people are interested in and like to practice tumo, fire offerings and feast offerings, as well as perform various other ritualistic ceremonies. Of course, these are also forms of Vajrayana activity. If one has attained certain states in the generation and completion stages, while this practice brings some merit, it is highly recommended to perfect the preliminary practices. This ensures a strong foundation for your spiritual journey. In the process of practicing the preliminaries, one should first do the common preliminaries. I have repeatedly and continually emphasized this to everyone, because if the foundation of the common preliminaries is not well established, it will be very difficult indeed to practice the uncommon and profound preliminaries that follow, which are essential for spiritual development. If the uncommon preliminaries are also not well practiced, the deeper, more profound states of Vajrayana are incredibly difficult to attain. Because of this, many practitioners in Tibet, including great scholars and accomplished masters, dedicate themselves with extraordinary diligence to the common preliminary practices. Some time ago, one of our former classmates, a good friend, he, having become a monk, is also a highly respected Dharma teacher, a Khenpo. He has recently been diligently studying in Qinghai, a vast and culturally rich province in western China. A few days ago, he came to stay at my home for a few days. While we were chatting, he said that in Guolu Prefecture, Qinghai, there is a master named Compassionate Teacher. This individual, who is now over 60 years old, has dedicated his life to spiritual practice, having completed the 5 preliminaries a remarkable 16 times. The most recent time he completed this rigorous practice was at the age of 60. He himself candidly stated that while the other preliminary practices did not present difficulties, the physical act of prostrations at 60 proved to be quite a challenge. Throughout his life, he consistently practiced both the common and the uncommon spiritual preliminaries again and again with great dedication. After a few more years had passed, he would diligently practice them again. It is widely said that even during the tumultuous period of the Cultural Revolution, he never once ceased his dedicated practice. Moreover, he is considered locally by many in the community as someone who maintains extremely pure precepts, having become a monk since childhood. Even though there was a lot of turmoil in Tibet, he never returned to lay life during that period. He practiced in a concealed way, and after a few years he would do the preliminaries again. From the common preliminaries to the uncommon ones, he meticulously completed them 16 times. He also stayed there for a considerable period of time and shared many insightful stories about his extensive experiences. After hearing them, I truly rejoiced. Such dedicated practitioners still exist in Tibet today. It's just that we are not fully aware of their existence. In fact, there are quite a significant number of such dedicated practitioners. I sincerely hope that this time, from the common and foundational preliminaries all the way to the more uncommon ones, everyone will diligently and completely finish these profound practices. It's not merely about rote recitation or simply accumulating numbers or just passively going through the motions without genuine engagement. In fact, with every single piece of guidance text that you encounter, you should truly feel something profound and meaningful in your heart. If you genuinely have this feeling and inspiration, then you will have genuine motivation and it will have a real effect. This time, the scope of our preliminary practices is also quite broad. Of course, during this process, a very small number of Dharma friends may give up halfway. This is a possibility. But I sincerely hope that, including myself, why do I choose to prostrate myself together with everyone, diligently, every single day? The fundamental reason, the very essence of this commitment, is that this particular opportunity, this precious chance we have been given, is incredibly rare and truly exceptional. because in reality, among all our various actions and endeavors, there are very few people who actually put virtuous deeds into practice themselves. Just talking about it or simply telling others about it is certainly not enough. Indeed, no matter what kind of person you may be, although I myself haven't practiced these principles many times before, just once in fact. When I first became a monk, I was mainly focused on completing the numbers. And in terms of the common preliminary practices, I often didn't contemplate very much either. This time I personally feel that while explaining, I also made sure to contemplate thoroughly beforehand. After reflecting, indeed, the feeling of the common preliminary practices is still very strong. Whenever I talk about the rarity of human life, I truly feel from the bottom of my heart that indeed everything else in the world is unimportant. Once we have obtained a human body, it is very important to practice virtuous deeds. Whenever I talk about the profound impermanence of life, every single principle, to me, it is truly and absolutely the case. Although my ability to express myself clearly while speaking is rather limited, and perhaps what I truly have in mind indeed is this. It may not be fully conveyed to you all one by one in the best way, but in reality, deep within my innermost heart, when I first thoroughly read through it, I personally had a certain profound feeling myself, and I also possess a very sincere and truly pure faith in the lineage masters and all the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas. I sincerely hope that through this dedicated practice there will be a truly significant and profound transformation in each and every person's life. Practice should not just be something we merely talk about. Secondly, it brings immense and lasting benefit even across multiple lifetimes. This is my aspiration. I sincerely hope that here, truly and deeply, in the ongoing process of diligent practice, each and every individual will reflect profoundly upon themselves. In this incredibly diverse and increasingly complex modern society, although there are many diverse circumstances appearing before us in our daily lives, the most profoundly important thing in life for us, I truly believe, is to diligently and consistently practice the fundamental preliminaries. During this process, other forms of practice or behaviors, whether in appearance or action, should be set aside as much as possible, and we should focus single-mindedly on the actual practice and its implementation. Next, let's discuss the fourth point, contemplating impermanence by reflecting on the world's revered figures. Because whether it is the truly great masters of the world or all the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas, these individuals themselves who are truly unparalleled in Buddhist accomplishment will ultimately also demonstrate impermanence. There is nothing permanent. Now, speaking of those in the world who are extremely famous, wealthy, or hold high status, even such people ultimately all leave this world one after another. Not a single one can remain in this world forever. Even gods and immortals whose lifespans last for countless eons and whose power and virtue are complete cannot escape the inevitability of death. Worldly lords such as Brahma, Indra, Mahabrahma, and Maheshvara are said to possess boundless longevity and can remain for many eons. Their majestic bodies can reach a yojana or even a yojana and a half in height, and the radiance of their bodies even surpasses that of the sun and moon. Yet they too cannot escape death. This is also stated in the Treasury of Merit. Brahma, Indra, and the universal monarch cannot escape the Lord of Death. This has already been explained here. In the worldly realms, whether in the heavens or among humans, all beings are subject to death. This includes even the most powerful figures like great heavenly kings, emperors, and presidents. The same holds true for gods or sages with immense stature, perfect majesty, and lifespans lasting for eons. They too will ultimately face their demise. We all must face the challenges of birth, old age, sickness, and death. One day, as we were holding a ceremony, a fellow practitioner spoke up. He expressed that, from his perspective, Buddhist teachings are something that the Japanese people truly need in their lives, because they too face birth, aging, sickness, and death. I think what he said was very true. I truly believe that nowadays everyone in the world really needs the profound wisdom of Buddhism. Why do I say this? Because, for example, for me right now, I find myself in a situation where the curriculum for first and second grade in elementary school is unnecessary. Why? Because I have already graduated, so why would I still study kindergarten? Such knowledge is not needed for me. As for medicine, if I don't necessarily become a doctor, I might not need it. But when it comes to the Dharma, We all have to face birth, aging, sickness, and death. We all experience suffering within the cycle of samsara. So for every patient, medicine is definitely necessary. Therefore, whether one is Japanese, Chinese, or American, or even a being from the heavenly realms, or a being in hell, all of them need to be freed from samsara. To escape this cycle of rebirth, the Dharma is truly essential. That's why we really hope that the Dharma can be spread to every corner of society and to the heart of every person. Why do we say this? If someone is a president of a country, does he need the Dharma? He definitely does. He too faces birth, aging, sickness, and death, and in the next life may fall into unfortunate realms, suffering just the same. If it's a beggar on the street, he also needs the nectar of the Dharma. So if we speak from a theoretical perspective, there is no sentient being who does not need the Dharma. It's just that some sentient beings cannot accept it directly. For example, if we look at some animals or non-human beings, they also need the Dharma, because within their mental continuum, they need to be freed from afflictions and suffering. If they are not freed from their suffering, they will continue to experience these intense and overwhelming feelings. However, if we try to directly instill Buddhist teachings and principles in them, at the present moment, this cannot be easily achieved. Therefore, as we discuss here, they too cannot escape the inevitability of death. For example, deities such as Indra, Brahma, Mahabrahma, and Maheshwara, when compared to the lifespan of humans, as everyone who has studied the Abhidharmakosha knows, their lifespans are extremely long, lasting for vast periods of time. But ultimately, they too must inevitably face the profound reality of death. When confronting the inevitable prospect of death, even celestial beings also experience significant suffering, just like all other beings. In the Buddhist scriptures, there was once a detailed account where Indra used his own supernatural powers to carefully observe the situation, and during his careful observation, he clearly saw that he was about to fall into the lower realms, a truly unfortunate destiny. There was a humble potter in the human world who had a female donkey, and it was into the form of this very creature that Indra was destined to be reborn. He discovered this through his amazing supernatural powers. Upon fully comprehending this profound realization, he immediately proceeded to the revered Buddha. In his magnificent and ethereal celestial form, he humbly sought and took refuge. While he was in the very act of taking refuge before the enlightened Buddha, his predetermined lifespan, unfortunately, reached its inevitable conclusion. When he stood up at that very moment, his consciousness had already completely departed from his body. It's about to go inside the donkey's body. At that moment, the donkey standing around the potter began to jump and prance about with great energy. The little donkey broke his pottery, which made the potter furious. In a fit of anger, he lashed out with his whip, striking the little donkey. The blow was fatal, and the young donkey died instantly. Upon its death, however, the being was reborn in the heavenly realm and once again became the god Indra. It was at this moment that the Buddha also spoke. By taking sincere refuge in the three precious jewels and through this accumulated merit, one's negative karma is purified and one will no longer suffer. Then he also explained some profound teachings about impermanence. In the end, Indra attained the blessed fruit of stream entry, Sotapanna. At that time, although he was facing the intense pain of death when he was about to die, at the very precise and final moment of his earthly death, it was through his own sincere act of taking refuge in the three jewels and the power of that merit that his consciousness had already departed from this state. Therefore, no celestial being in this world is ultimately free from death. Nowadays, people in the world talk about the Taoist pursuit of immortality, as well as various claims about immortals who live forever and never die. But in reality, these are just temporary perspectives based on relative time. In fact, none of them can ultimately and inevitably escape death. For example, even celestial beings themselves emit light, and this brilliant light far surpasses that of the sun and the moon. Yet in the end, they all truly and inevitably die. Therefore, the Treasury of Merits also states, in addition, that whether it is Brahma, Indra, or the universal monarch, and so on, all sentient and conscious beings in this vast and intricate world, not a single one is exempt from death. None can escape the demon of death. They will all die. All of us fellow practitioners gathered here today, in just a few decades, or even in 100 years from now, will have passed on. How many of us will still remain in this world? We can reflect on this ourselves. Therefore, death is not far away at all. You could truly say it is right in front of each and every one of us. Everyone naturally clings to life and fears death, but in reality there is absolutely nothing we can do about it. This is the very fundamental nature of impermanence. Furthermore, even celestial beings and powerful immortals endowed with the 5 kinds of extraordinary supernatural powers, though they can roam freely and travel through the vast sky by the immense power of their miracles, in the end, they too cannot ultimately escape the inevitable fate of death and decay. As it is stated in the Book of Dispelling Worries, great sages possessing the 5 powers can travel through the sky, yet they cannot reach a place free from death. Among those in the world who possess the 5 kinds of supernatural powers, some may not have the power of the exhaustion of outflows. These 5 powers are miraculous powers, divine vision, divine hearing, knowledge of past lives, and mind reading. Those who possess these 5 extraordinary and profound supernatural powers, such as the revered immortals or the magnificent celestial beings, are often regarded with immense awe and deep reverence. No matter how truly great, indeed, their very supernatural abilities or quite miraculous powers may be, in fact. Of course, we humans now walk using our physical bodies, but celestial beings are not like this. Whether in the vast sky above or in various diverse places throughout the entire world, they can roam about freely and walk with ease wherever they truly wish to go. However, in the ultimate end, they too cannot escape the inevitable grasp of death. You cannot transcend the destiny of death. There's a story in the Dhammapada Parable Sutra that illustrates this point. It is an account from the time when the Buddha was in the city of Rajagriha. At that time, there were 4 Brahmin brothers who possessed the 5 supernatural powers. In India, sometimes they are called Brahmins, and at other times they are referred to as sages. This particular term is quite commonly used. These 4 brothers truly surpassed all others in their miraculous powers and their supernatural abilities. They could even move entire mountains into the ocean and control the movement of the sun. Their supernatural powers and miraculous abilities were truly formidable. As we see in the extensive biography of Shakyamuni Buddha, in the distant past, celestial beings, whether they uttered truly evil curses or not, some revered sages, a remarkable 500 of them, could effortlessly fly together like graceful swans. Their immense powers were truly incredible and utterly beyond human imagination. At that significant time, these 4 powerful brothers, they were renowned for having a comprehensive and profound mastery over all the supernatural phenomena in the world. However, at one point they used their powers to look into their own fates. To their shock, they discovered that all 4 of them were destined to die within a mere 7 days. With only this short span of life remaining, they came together to discuss the situation and ultimately came to a shared conclusion. Now, we possess such truly great supernatural powers, so in this world we should certainly therefore be able to escape death. One of them said, "I plan to go deep into the vast ocean. I won't merely float on the surface nor sink completely to the bottom, but instead I will strategically stay in the middle of the expansive sea. The spirit of death cannot possibly enter the ocean, so I will skillfully use my powers to effectively hide in its depths." Another said, "I will utilize my potent supernatural powers to enter the majestic Mount Sumeru, a place where there are no gaps at all. How could the hosts of the death demon possibly come into the middle of Mount Sumeru? It's impossible." Then another person said, "I can move with complete freedom and unhindered grace in the vast open sky, and the formidable hosts of the death demon cannot possibly fly into the sky to pursue and chase me there." Another person then thoughtfully said, "I should go into a bustling, vibrant, and lively city. In the midst of the bustling crowds, the hosts of the death demon couldn't possibly follow me." They believed that with so many people in the city, if they hid and moved through the crowds, they would surely not be found. In this way, they came up with 4 different methods to escape. Each of them then went their separate ways to hide, following their own chosen path. But in the end, after 7 long and arduous days had passed, indeed each of the Brahmins met a tragic and inevitable fate. Some perished in the vast, deep ocean, their bodies consumed by hungry fish and other fearsome aquatic creatures of the depths. Some died in the boundless sky, plummeting relentlessly to the ground below, much like withered leaves falling from their branches. And still others died within the colossal and mysterious Mount Sumeru, their lives extinguished in its immense and hidden depths. And some individuals tragically died within the bustling, vibrant city, right there in the very midst of the large, moving crowds. In the end, all 4 of them could not escape death. Later, Shakyamuni Buddha said to his 4-fold assembly of disciples, "These 4 Brahmin brothers were truly very foolish. No being in this world can possibly escape the inevitable grasp of death. The Buddha thus admonished his fourfold assembly of disciples. So we really need to fully understand the entire situation at hand, that some patients or beings whose lifespan has already come to an end still desperately want to keep living. They beg doctors, officials, and many others, earnestly asking if they can live just a little bit longer, but this is absolutely impossible. Especially when one's life has truly ended, then no one can do anything about it, not even Shakyamuni Buddha. There probably isn't anyone in this world who can compare to him, but even his power is of no use in this regard. In the past, some historical records have also mentioned this. For example, when the Shakya clan fought against King Virudaka because of the karma from their past lives, King Virudaka's army slaughtered all the members of the Shakya clan. Shakyamuni Buddha, in order to demonstrate the infallibility of cause and effect. From the Shakya clan, there were 2 people who went into hiding in the sea, 2 who relocated to the moon, and another 2 who, through supernatural powers, concealed themselves within a begging bowl. Over the course of the entire conflict, these 6 individuals were able to completely avoid any harm, remaining untouched by the widespread destruction. But after the intense fighting was completely over, these unfortunate people naturally perished. Absolutely none of them survived. This is truly the undeniable result of sentient beings' own accumulated karma from their past lives. And when one's lifespan has come to an end, no one can do anything about it. Even if the Buddha or Medicine Buddha were to appear before us, there's nothing that can be done. Let alone the people in this world now. Oh, you're a really good traditional Chinese medicine doctor. Let me see. Can you please take my pulse and then tell me something? The traditional Chinese medicine doctor typically takes your pulse, then asks you to open your mouth and carefully checks your tongue. Then says, oh yes, let me look at your eyes here. Then feels around here, pinches your ears. But beyond that, even traditional Chinese medicine cannot do anything. It's as if Chinese medicine had supernatural powers. Then the doctor goes, oh yes, he certainly has a significant deficiency of qi and blood, a clear deficiency of qi and blood. So in the very end, he sadly died. He truly did have a significant deficiency of qi and blood, a condition that profoundly impacted his vital energy and overall well-being. There is absolutely nothing that can be done to alter the fundamental truth that everyone, without exception, has to face this kind of inevitable end, a universal experience of mortality. So, in the process of our practice, we still need to seriously and thoughtfully reflect on these important things from a rational and objective perspective. After thinking it through like this, we should be clear ourselves. Even though there are literally millions and millions of people living in the world, if you truly think about it, almost everyone understands this fundamental principle. But no one ever really considers that it could happen to themselves. This is because people don't contemplate impermanence. In the hospital, when friends and family pass away, why do we feel so heartbroken and in so much pain? No matter if the demon of death falls upon ourselves or upon our dear friends and beloved family members, everyone looks so incredibly pale, and the heart-wrenching cries of profound grief are extremely mournful and deeply sorrowful. The fundamental reason for this pervasive suffering is that we haven't truly and deeply practiced or fully realized the undeniable impermanence of death. If we were to genuinely and deeply understand this fundamental impermanence of death and truly internalize its profound implications, then whether it happens to ourselves or to others, when the profound reality of death and impermanence inevitably occurs, we are faced with a significant truth. You will feel that it is only natural, just a law of nature. You will face it calmly, and it won't be so unbearably painful, but rather a manageable discomfort. In short, those individuals who have diligently studied Mahayana Buddhism, especially those who have deeply contemplated the nature of impermanence, are indeed truly very courageous in the face of death, you could quite say. Other people, even if they are truly knowledgeable about absolutely everything in the entire world, when the formidable Lord of Death truly comes before you at the very end of your journey and all is revealed, as people are confronted with the profound reality of their final departure from this world, a great many of them find that their inner fortitude begin to significantly weaken. Their faces turn incredibly pale, losing all color, and a multitude of sorrowful and distressing states begin to appear, reflecting their deep anguish. Next, it is also said that precisely the same principle holds true in the human world as well. Even those with great wealth and power, all the universal monarchs, as well as the revered kings of the Indian Holy Lands who succeeded one another, the inconceivable monarchs who ruled over Jambudvipa in the south, and also powerful kings like Shambhala and the 37 great kings of Zanza, and so on and so forth. And the many kings in India, both East and West, who held prominent status and immense wealth, although they all appeared in the world one after another. However, all of these things have now become a glorious part of history, and none of them remain. As for us, we may not be very well versed in the intricate details of Indian history, but it's likely that a great many people still have some basic understanding of it, primarily because Buddhism originated there. There are quite a few historical records, whether meticulously preserved in Chinese or carefully documented in Tibetan, that provide detailed accounts about the various kings, ministers, and dynasties of India. Both in Chinese and Tibetan, there are many well-documented written accounts. For example, the History of Indian Buddhism, written by Taranatha of Tibet, which continuously describes how the Dharma profoundly flourished and expanded. And after the appearance of Shakyamuni Buddha, covers the entire history of the two supreme ones and the 6 ornaments. At that time, the entire history and political background of India and so on are all described quite clearly and comprehensively. So, in India, many significant things first appeared, such as the wheel-turning kings mentioned in the sutras and treatises. Later, the king of universal respect appeared. According to the famous Tibetan historical text known as the Red Annals, it is widely said that the very first king of all humanity, or we could more precisely say of India, was indeed the king of universal respect. In the very beginning of human existence, humans had absolutely no attachment to the concepts of mine or yours at all. Everyone shared everything together. Moreover, every single being's body emitted a radiant light, and there was absolutely no need to divide property among themselves. But later, as the being's merit gradually diminished, property needed to be divided, and differences between men and women also appeared. Moreover, the individual houses and separate residences where they lived were all distinctly separated. During this challenging time, various conflicts arose among them. Later on, what transpired between them could be described as quite similar to today's modern democratic elections. Many modern democracies use the concept of the king respected by the people as a representative example, saying that the very first kings in human history were chosen through democratic elections. Why was he called the king respected by the people? It was whoever received the most respect. If the majority respected someone, they would make him king. The king, who was deeply respected and admired by all the people, was universally praised and subsequently made king. His royal descendants continued their lineage through generations, and among them was King Shuddhodana, who was the revered father of the enlightened Shakyamuni Buddha. Therefore, it is important to note that, right from the very beginning of this historical account, kings like the Indian king respected by the people continued to rule in succession. India is also very famous for this particular aspect. For example, there was Sambala, Kasabala, Dewabala, Resabala, and so on, among many others. In texts like the Red Annals, there are quite a few such examples. There were also 37 Zancha kings, King Hari Zancha, King Zaya Zancha. Altogether, there were indeed 37 distinct generations of Zancha kings, and so on. Many prominent kings from both the eastern and western parts of the vast Indian subcontinent have already appeared and made their mark in the world. But now, as we currently know, that historical system no longer exists. The entire system of kingship and royal rule in India ended a considerable time ago. In later history, for example, there were influential people like Gandhi and many other significant humanitarians, as well as some very famous and prominent figures who continued to emerge. But all of them have already passed away. Therefore, when you look at the entire history of India's rulers and their officials, it becomes very easy to understand the fundamental principle that all things are impermanent. Then turning to our own land of snow, Tibet, since the author is Tibetan, let's speak from the perspective of the snowy land of Tibet. Since the time of King Nyatri Tsempo, the incarnation of the bodhisattva who removes obstacles, there have been the 7 heavenly kings, the 6 wise kings of the earth, and the 8 virtuous kings of the middle period, the 5 early Zen kings, the 13 generations of happiness, the 5 generations of great bliss, and so on. But now, all of these no longer exist. Here, a brief written account is given of all the kings and ministers of Tibet. Indeed, in the snowy land of Tibet, many of the kings were emanations of Buddhas and Bodhisattvas. The first king was Nyatri Tsempo, the incarnation of the Bodhisattva who removes obstacles. Nyatri Tsempo is called the shoulder-seated king in Chinese. This is because he belonged to the esteemed lineage of the revered kings. He was indeed such a remarkable person. His body, especially his hands and feet, were distinctly webbed, much like those of a graceful swan. At that particular time, he wandered directly into the region of Tibet. The local Indians considered this an ominous sign and promptly made him leave. When he arrived in Tibet, there were many herders in the land. In the area north of present-day Lhasa, they encountered this child. They asked him, where did you come from? At that time, he pointed his finger toward the sky. People believed he had come from the heavens and must be a celestial being. So they treated him with truly great respect and carefully carried him upon their strong shoulders with much reverence. Then they subsequently made him their king, which is precisely why he was famously called the shoulder-seated king. Nyatri Tsenpo, who is widely considered the very first and legendary king of Tibet. Then, in ancient times, the 7 heavenly kings, including Nyatri Tsenpo, Mutri Tsenpo, and Tingtri Tsenpo, appeared. In the past, we did a considerable amount of memorization. This was especially the case for me, particularly when I was a student at a normal school. I was very deeply interested in the rich and extensive history of Tibet. Sometimes, while the teacher was diligently giving us our regular Chinese language lessons or our engaging music lessons, I would often be quietly reading a great many comprehensive history books entirely on my own. That's precisely when I started the extensive process of memorizing the historically significant names of these kings. Why were they called the 7 heavenly kings? After these kings passed away, their tombs were said to have been built high up in the sky. This means that these kings, starting with the very first of the 7 heavenly kings, all achieved something truly remarkable, like the legendary rainbow body, so there were no physical tombs left behind. So, people widely believed that they were indeed received by celestial beings. Nowadays, some people assert that Tibet originally believed in a singular God as well. There is such a widely held saying, and there's absolutely nothing wrong with that particular view. Some time ago, an American individual came all the way to Beijing. While taking the subway in Beijing, he politely asked a few local people some questions. Some Chinese people told him that God doesn't exist, and he became very upset. He said, "How can you not even acknowledge the existence of God? That's as ignorant and unthinking as animals are." He was extremely angry at the time. He insisted that God should be acknowledged, and if you don't even acknowledge God, what kind of person are you? So, at that time in Tibet, during the era of the 7 heavenly kings, it was also widely believed that the king would, in the end, directly ascend to heaven. There are also historical accounts that mention this specific belief. Then came the 6 wise kings of the earth. There are various accounts of this in history, and they are not all the same. But according to the history as told by Khenpo Palzang Rinpoche, the tomb of the last of the 6 wise kings of the earth was built between a rocky mountain and a grassy hill. That's why they are called the 6 wise kings of the earth. As for the 8 kings of Zhongde, their tombs, primarily those of the later kings, are strategically located deep within the water underground, which is precisely why they are famously called the 8 kings of Zhongde. In stark contrast, the tombs of the 5 kings of Chuzan were meticulously constructed either atop towering mountaintops or securely within the boundaries of the king's own sovereign country. In other words, they were constructed within the royal grounds. After that came the auspicious and blessed 13 generations of happiness, which commenced after the revered Latotori. As we learned earlier, during the significant time of Latotori, the sacred 6-syllable mantra and the profound sutra of the jeweled casket miraculously appeared above his magnificent palace, as well as numerous stupas and other essential supports for the precious 3 jewels. It was also prophesied that after 5 more generations, someone would be able to fully understand their contents. After another 5 generations, Songtsen Gampo was born. From Latotori, extending up until just before Trisong Detsen, there were indeed the 13 generations of happiness. During that particular period of time, compared to the era that came before, Buddhism truly flourished much more greatly. That is precisely why it is known and called the 13 generations of happiness. Because, as we have mentioned earlier, starting from the reign of King Songtsen Gampo, he married 2 significant princesses and also obtained sacred statues of Shakyamuni Buddha, as well as many other invaluable supports for the blessings of the 3 jewels. Moreover, the unique Tibetan script was also created within Tibet. Gar Tongtsen, the esteemed minister who was the emanation of the powerful Vajrapani Bodhisattva, also journeyed to China. Consequently, there was truly significant progress in diplomatic relations in many important areas as well. For these compelling reasons, it is indeed called the 13 generations of happiness. Following this significant period, the era spanning from the revered King Trisong Detsen all the way to the reign of Tridesongtsen is historically recognized and auspiciously referred to as the 5 generations of bliss. It should start from the time of King Trisong Detsen. He invited the truly incomparable Guru Padmasambhava and the revered Bodhisattva Shantarakshita. They also translated the Kangyur and Tengyur scriptures and established Samye Monastery, the first monastery in Tibet, among other achievements. After that, Buddhism flourished greatly, especially during the reign of King Trisong Detsen. He would tie his hair into 2 braids and lay them on the ground, allowing tantric yogis who recited mantras to walk over them. This was a gesture of respect toward the monastic community. He also laid one of his long braids on the ground so that the ordained Sangha could respectfully walk over it, as a sign of deep reverence. Therefore, King Trira Pachen's great reverence for Buddhism and his contributions to the Dharma were truly immense. So many kings and officials like him have come into this world, yet they have all since vanished, existing only in the pages of history. This is a truth that everyone should clearly understand. All things are subject to the fundamental law of impermanence. Here it talks about the manifestation of Avalokiteshvara, and during the reign of King Songtsen Gampo, he relied on an illusory army to conquer vast territories stretching from Nepal in the north to China in the south. Many historical records, especially the red annals, blue annals, and white annals, if you're familiar with these significant Tibetan histories, it is worth noting that these chronicles provide extensive details. You will know that during King Songtsen Gampo's time, his power was truly formidable. This should be quite clear indeed. But today, we will not analyze this here for the time being. What was the territory like exactly? What was the overall structure like in general? These are also rather sensitive topics, so I won't talk about them this year either. Our main focus is to observe from the perspective of impermanence. During the reign of King Trisong Detsen, the emanation of Manjushri, he also ruled over 2/3 of the southern continent of Jambudvipa. There are many reliable historical records about these matters, especially Gendun Chompel, who later conducted very precise research on this. Although Gendun Chompel did not live a very long life, he passed away in his 50s, but his profound and extensive research on history is now widely recognized and celebrated internationally. He was indeed a brilliant and exceptionally wise historian. Then, during the influential reign of King Trera Pachen, a remarkable and enduring iron pillar was prominently erected on the verdant banks of the sacred Ganges River in India, as a significant marker of the border between India and Tibet, situated on the banks of the sacred Ganges River. Later, when Charozawa, the translator, went to India, they stayed there for the entire night. In Gendun Chompel's travel notes, it is written like this. He stated, "I spent the entire night at the ancient iron pillar, located prominently by the sacred Ganges River, where a significant historical monument stands. The following day, I departed from the vast Tibetan territory, successfully crossed the wide Ganges, and subsequently arrived in the diverse land of India. Therefore, from his detailed travel notes, we can clearly discern that at that specific time, the geographical territory of Tibet extended all the way to the majestic Ganges River. When we went to India, we asked, where exactly is this very pillar located? But the mighty Ganges River is so incredibly vast and expansive, so we truly couldn't find it either. During Gendun Chompel's extensive research there, he also explicitly mentioned this significant matter in his highly regarded Notes on the Sacred Mountains of India. At that particular time, the regions of India, China, Kesa, and Dasu were also successfully brought under control. Dasu refers to the region around Iran, and many other countries became vassal states as well. So, you could indeed say, to a very considerable extent, sometimes, if you are truly willing to look back at the long and intricate history of things, in fact, you can learn a great deal. You'll find that, indeed, especially during the significant historical period of Ada Chirabajin, a time of considerable importance. At that particular time, whether it was the extensive territory of Tibet or the intricate relationships of neighboring countries with Tibet, including the complex and far-reaching process by which revered Tibetan masters diligently spread the profound teachings of Buddhism, you can see some of the connections within these events. From then on, at every grand New Year's banquet, diplomatic envoys from various countries were strictly required to gather in the ancient city of Lhasa on the same designated day, to hold ceremonies such as presenting tributes and offering gifts. At that time, there was indeed such a very significant great influence. So this briefly explains that the kings of Tibet at that particular historical period, the territory they ruled, was incredibly vast and extensive. But in the end, all of them eventually departed from their earthly reigns, leaving their kingdoms one after another. I genuinely believe it's precisely the same in the Han region as well. Throughout the entire dynastic history, Xia, Shang, Zhou, Qin, the three kingdoms, the two Jin, and the northern and southern dynasties, as well as the Tang, Song, Yuan, Ming, and Qing dynasties, all of these significant historical dynasties. The kings and emperors of each dynasty were extremely powerful, wielding immense authority and influence. Especially in the history of the Han region, for example, those individuals who made truly significant contributions, such as Qin Shi Huang and the great Emperor Wu of Han, as well as Emperor Taizong of Tang, Emperor Taizu of Song, Emperor Kangxi, and other notable historical figures. People like them possessed immense power and far-reaching influence, extending far beyond what ordinary individuals could even conceivably imagine or comprehend. However, later on, they all completely passed away. This is also true for the leaders from the Qing dynasty to the present, who have been replaced one generation after another. We can clearly see that everything is truly impermanent, and we're not just talking about major leaders. Even among the Dharma friends present here, some of you may be a bit older, you've witnessed significant changes in your own village and family, all sorts of things and transformations. And you should be well aware of this yourself. We've also studied a lot of history, geography, and astronomy. Looking at each of these profound concepts from the unique perspective of scientific historical figures, for example, in the vast field of physics, people like the brilliant Albert Einstein and the foundational Isaac Newton, they only appeared for a finite time. Now, apart from their enduring legacy in history, they no longer physically exist. Similarly, consider figures like Kai Lun, who famously invented paper, or the renowned astronomer Zhang Heng, who made significant contributions, or mathematicians like the renowned Zhu Zhongji and the esteemed Zhang Zhongjing. These are all things that we have previously studied and read about in our school textbooks. Other than that, it is also important to note that these particular people are also gone. There are also prominent historical figures such as Li Daoyuan, a renowned geographer, and Jie Sixi, an esteemed agriculturalist, among many other influential individuals. Although these notable figures once appeared and made their mark in the world, they have now, in the passage of time, all passed away. We can clearly see this through their remarkable deeds and comprehensive biographies. It truly shows the impermanence of life. This includes people in our own families as well. Many from the older generation have now been completely and utterly replaced. Sometimes I truly think to myself, when I was quite young, my father and his entire generation back then, when people referred to various families, it was always that particular family or that specific family, like that, you see. Then just a few years ago, it seemed like people our age were the ones being called that family or that family. Now, when I go back to our ancestral village, I observe that people of our specific age group have already been gradually phased out. Those considerably younger than us have become the respected heads of their households. So, generation after generation, everyone has been continuously replaced. It's just like flowers blooming and withering. Impermanence is right before our eyes. But even though everything around us, the vibrant spring, the warm summer, the colorful autumn, the cold winter, the bright day and the dark night, is constantly changing, every day, every minute, every second, we still have a very deeply rooted mindset called the belief in permanence. This belief in permanence means we haven't truly understood the reality of impermanence. This is the confusion that all sentient beings share. That is precisely why, in our spiritual practice, we must diligently cultivate a profound and deep contemplation of the inherent impermanence of all phenomena. Why do the Kadampa school and many great masters of Tibetan Buddhism believe that if one cultivates a deep understanding of impermanence, all other teachings will be mastered as well? The reason lies right here. Even though they once possessed such great power, now all of that has become nothing more than a record in history. Aside from what's found in books or countless historical records, nothing remains. In the end, the only thing truly left of these historical figures is nothing more than written words. And ultimately, even those words will disappear. All of us here too, in just a few hundred years from now, will be gone. Perhaps some of us will have a few words written about us, while others won't even have that much recorded, their existence fading into obscurity. It will be just like when a tiny ant dies, unnoticed and unremembered. Who, after all, takes the time to write the detailed biography of a mere ant? Yes, sometimes in the grand scheme of things, we really are quite pitiable and insignificant. If we reflect on these truths,
then everything we possess now, our homes, our enjoyments, our families, our power, and so on, we think so highly of ourselves, feeling so superior. But compared to those sages and great figures mentioned above, we are like a beehive, insignificant. Here it is also said, indeed, when we compare ourselves to all the kings, officials, and sages mentioned above, considering their profound wisdom, incredible abilities, and great contributions to human society, we might instead find ourselves thinking, "Oh, my house is so beautiful. Look, today I have truly built a brand new house. How absolutely wonderful it looks indeed." And then, in their own homes, people would focus on adorning their space with decorations. For instance, some lay Buddhists nowadays, after completely renovating their houses, feel an immense sense of satisfaction. They believe that they have created something on the same level as the great Potala Palace. And this fills them with extraordinary happiness. However, these things are neither truly substantial, nor are they genuinely important. When bees finish building their hive, they are also very happy. But after a long and beautiful summer, when the harsh winter inevitably comes, their ultimate fate is that they truly have no other choice but to sadly leave it all behind. So, as it is also profoundly said in the ancient Buddhist scriptures, alas, all conditioned phenomena are by their very nature impermanent and fleeting. The meaning of alas, all conditioned phenomena is that the very nature of all conditioned things is impermanence. Once there is birth, death inevitably follows. The wise should deeply understand this. After birth, death inevitably comes right after. Just like a person's ever-present shadow faithfully follows them, all those with true wisdom must profoundly understand this fundamental truth and deeply realize the truth of impermanence and death. Otherwise, generally speaking, people often have a very poor sense of impermanence. Some people, perhaps due to favorable karmic connections from past lives, may have had a strong sense of impermanence from a young age, and some have cultivated it very well. Last night I wasn't feeling particularly well and as a result couldn't sleep at all. To pass the time, I opened the renowned biographies of eminent monks of the Song dynasty and began to read about a fascinating Chan master named Jixuan. Of course, he later became a truly remarkable and highly respected figure, ultimately living a long and full life to the impressive age of 73. He made truly tremendous and significant contributions to the development of Buddhism in China. When he was still very young, he had already cultivated a profound and deep sense of the impermanence of all things. When he was approximately 5 years old, his grandfather asked him to compose a poem. In response to his grandfather's request, he said, "When the flowers burst into bloom, they cover the entire tree in a vibrant shade of red. But once they fall, 10,000 branches are left completely bare and empty. But when the beautiful flowers fall, all the branches are completely empty. Only a single bud remains, which will surely be blown away by the wind tomorrow." What does he mean by that? When the tree is in full bloom, it is completely covered in vibrant red flowers, radiant and truly beautiful to behold indeed. But when the beautiful and vibrant flowers finally fall from their delicate stems, all the branches are left completely bare and exposed. When the lovely flowers fall, they all fall away, leaving nothing behind. At that very moment, there might still be one solitary flower, perhaps a delicate blossom, that has not yet completely fallen from its stem. However, the inevitable fate of that single resilient flower is that, with the arrival of tomorrow, it too will undoubtedly be swept away and dispersed by the powerful gusts of the wind. There is nothing truly reliable. So, if we look at it in a broader sense, everyone here is truly thriving and very much alive in this world right now, at this very moment. But when death and impermanence arrive, each and every one of us will leave. At that particular time, perhaps only 1 or 2 individuals will truly remain, but their ultimate fate is also to very soon leave this transient world, for truly nothing lasts forever. So sometimes, after deeply considering and observing this, the spiritual cultivation and profound wisdom of these great masters is indeed truly admirable. There was also a Buddhist monk known as Chan Master Lingyu, who passed away at the age of 88. At that time, Emperor Wen of the Sui dynasty held him in great esteem and extended a personal invitation for him to come to the imperial court to serve as the national preceptor. However, the Chan master consistently refused the offer, as he was unwilling to live among worldly people. Later on, the emperor tried every possible way to persuade him, sending him a vast amount of wealth and many valuable possessions, hoping he would use them to build a monastery. Of course, his mission to spread the Dharma and his beneficial actions for all sentient beings were considered to be enormously significant and far-reaching during that era. Towards the end of his life, as he was drawing near to the time of his passing and his entry into nirvana, he spoke these profound words. "Today I am seated in a place of high honor, but by tomorrow morning I shall be lying upon a bed of long thorns. My life's work is already complete. What else could possibly be left to answer for or to repay? What does this truly mean? Today, I sit upon a lofty Dharma seat. But after I die tomorrow, I might very well be lying among sharp, piercing thorns that deeply wound and painfully afflict my body and cause me great suffering. This probably refers to the 3 lower realms or something like that. The work of my life is now complete. What will become of me in the future is difficult to say. 7 days after leaving behind that final gatha, he departed from this world. So, my thought is that if every fellow practitioner could truly and profoundly engrave this lesson of impermanence into the depths of their own hearts, their understanding would be greatly deepened. Then it would be much easier to practice. These great masters and accomplished teachers spent their whole lives thinking only of the Dharma. They neither sought fame nor profit nor anything else. They practiced with great sincerity. But we are not like that now. Many people have a very strong attachment to the worldly realm. While they might verbally profess to be practicing the Dharma, they are actually often unable to let go. In reality, they are constantly ensnared by the temptations of the mundane world, which they simply cannot abandon. Therefore, if you look at the biographies of some of the eminent monks and great masters from the Han regions, it truly inspires a lot of faith. In the Tibetan Dudjom history of Buddhism, also known as the history of Tibetan esoteric Buddhism, there are also many treasure revealers and tantric yogis, as well as some practitioners from Tibet. The way they lived and how we live now are indeed very different. Actually, whether one is a layperson or a monastic, while we all possess the same fundamental human body, the individual circumstances and challenges we encounter throughout our lives are not always the same. There was also a profoundly respected and great monk from the Han region, known by the esteemed title of Chan Master Chengguan. He dedicated his entire life to diligently spreading the Dharma, tirelessly teaching and expounding the sacred scriptures with great dedication and profound wisdom. During his impactful lifetime, he made 10 significant and great vows. He stated that his first vow was to not keep any property or possessions in his abbot's room. Other than his 3 monastic robes and the scriptures of the 3 jewels, no other items were to be kept. His aspiration was to live a life of perfect purity, much like the tradition practiced in Thailand, and as such, he would not keep any money whatsoever. For his second solemn vow, he explicitly stated, "I will cast aside all fame and every form of profit as if they were nothing more than snot." He completely abandoned all pursuit of worldly fame and material gain. For his third solemn vow, since he was a devoted monk, he declared, "My eyes will not look upon women." He meticulously and strictly upheld these pure precepts and would not observe any actions of women at all. For his fourth profound vow, he never visited lay households. He would not go to the homes of lay people under any circumstances. He was so steadfast in his refusal to engage with worldly affairs that he would not go to the imperial court, even if it meant facing starvation. His fifth vow was to continuously recite the Lotus Sutra over the long term. His sixth vow was to dedicate his life to the consistent reading and recitation of the Mahayana scriptures. Finally, his seventh vow was to regularly expound on the Sutra of the great bounteousness of the Buddhas for the benefit of all who sought his teachings. Throughout his life, he lectured on the Sutra of the great bounteousness of the Buddhas many times. For his eighth vow, he neither lay down nor slept day or night. And his ninth vow was to be completely free from deception. He vowed never to deceive or mislead anyone through any means or methods whatsoever. In other words, for the sake of his impeccable reputation, he would absolutely never deceive or mislead any sentient being under any circumstances. For the sake of his reputation or personal gain, he never intentionally deceived any sentient being. Another significant vow was that he would never abandon his deeply compassionate bodhicitta, his enlightened mind. It seems like there are actually 9. I completely forgot one. Are there now precisely 10? Yes, indeed. He also never lost his truly compassionate and unwavering bodhicitta. So after carefully reading and deeply considering this, I reflected profoundly on myself and my own journey. Not sleeping day or night is something I simply can't do. And aside from the 3 robes, not coming into contact with money is also difficult. Abandoning all fame and profit completely also seems impossible for me. So when we compare today's practitioners with those of the past, there is a significant difference in the strength of the mind. I feel very ashamed, but we still need to have confidence and do our best to learn. Nowadays, apart from truly practicing the Dharma and benefiting sentient beings, I believe that nothing else in this world has any real meaning. I am deeply convinced of this. Whether it is for fame or for profit, nothing in this transient world can truly be relied upon. Woe, the only true meaning is to make a vow ourselves and wholeheartedly use the Dharma to benefit sentient beings. If we have time, we should earnestly practice profound teachings, especially those focused on impermanence. This is precisely how we should truly think. What lasting or truly stable quality can worldly pleasures possibly possess? None at all, absolutely none. Fame, social status, and everything else in this transient world are ultimately meaningless and utterly insignificant. Therefore, we should reflect deeply and meditate thoughtfully on these profound principles. We must contemplate them very thoroughly. If you do not reflect and meditate, these teachings will never truly merge with your heart. Therefore, as the esteemed Gendun Chömpa wisely stated in his profound work, The Instructions for Practice, he observed, "This transient and impermanent physical body truly possesses not the slightest enduring substance. Consequently, now is indeed the most opportune time to diligently and earnestly practice the most profound and excellent Dharma." So this body that we currently possess right now, there is not even the slightest bit of permanence, substance, or true reliability to be found. Therefore, as we rely on this human body we possess, it is absolutely essential for us to dedicate ourselves with great diligence to cultivating the most profound and wondrous Dharma. This is a matter of the highest importance for every single spiritual practitioner. We also frequently pray to the Guru and the Three Jewels, hoping that the realization of impermanence will arise in our mind streams as soon as possible. If the awareness of impermanence arises, you will gradually lose interest in other things, and worldly matters will no longer attract your attention. As for the Dharma, you won't need to be reminded about it every single day. Like, hey, practice, why aren't you practicing? If don't practice, I'll punish. No need to say such things. You will naturally be motivated, and no one will need to persuade you. Nowadays, some lay practitioners are constantly being called by their Vajra friends, saying things like, attend the teachings, don't skip, be diligent. No need to say such things. If the motivation of impermanence is present, attending teachings will happen naturally. Worldly matters are unimportant. Attending teachings becomes most important in their life, their existence. They will understand that studying the Dharma is most important. If our contemplation on impermanence is not strong, then every day will be the same, just like a particularly mischievous child who always needs to be urged by their parents. No matter how much we constantly remind ourselves, sometimes it's still very, very hard to truly change. Therefore, among all profound teachings, we should first develop a firm and deep understanding of the fundamental principle of impermanence. Then, if we encourage ourselves, transformation becomes much easier. All right, we'll stop here for today.
Om